Full story. Family took my future. But here's how I took it back and built my dreams. Have you ever felt like all your hard work was undermined by someone else's decisions? This is the story of a 22-year-old young man who spent his entire youth building a career and saving up for a $3,600 gaming computer. But when he came home from a hangout, he discovered that his computer had been sold to help his sister buy supplies for an event. What happens when your family doesn't understand the sacrifices you've made? Stay tuned for the full story and don't forget to like and subscribe to Silent Wars for more exciting videos. Since I was a kid, gaming has always been more than just a hobby for me, it's been my passion. I remember the first time I picked up a video game controller, and from that moment, I was hooked. As I grew older, my love for gaming evolved into something deeper. I realized that it wasn't just about escaping into another world, it was about creating something of my own, something that allowed me to express my creativity, skills, and even make a living. At 22 years old, I set myself a goal: to build my dream PC. It wasn't just about having a machine that could run the latest games at the highest settings. It was about building a tool that would empower me to chase my dreams. I wanted a computer that wasn't just a gaming console, but a machine that could support my freelance work as a graphic designer. For me, this wasn't just a PC, it was an investment in my future. I had no intention of asking my parents for help. This was going to be my project from start to finish. So, I started saving every penny I earned from part-time jobs and freelance gigs. I worked long hours at minimum wage, took on small design projects, and stretched every birthday or holiday gift to its fullest potential. No amount of money was too small to add to my savings. The process took years, but I was determined. Every time I got paid, a chunk of it went straight into the PC fund. I pored over specs, watched build tutorials, and researched every component to ensure I got the most out of my hard-earned cash. Finally, after years of saving and planning, I did it. I built a custom gaming rig that cost $3,600. It wasn't just a computer. It was a symbol of my dedication, hard work, and passion. It represented everything I had sacrificed for over the years: the long nights, the unpaid hours, the time spent in front of a screen, all of it leading to this moment. I finally had the machine that would allow me to create, to game, and to push my career forward. I felt proud. This PC wasn't just about the games I played, it was my future, my escape, and my tool for success. But little did I know, what came next would shake me to my core. It was a Saturday, like any other. I had spent the afternoon with my best friend Ethan, talking about the upcoming gaming tournament we were both looking forward to. We were brainstorming strategies, joking about who would take the top spot, and planning our next big move in the gaming world. Ethan and I had been gaming together for years, and this tournament felt like a big opportunity for both of us. I couldn't wait to get home, set up my rig, and practice. My custom-built $3,600 gaming PC had been my pride and joy for months, and I was determined to dominate this competition. As I drove home, I was buzzing with excitement. I envisioned myself sitting in front of my new PC, headphones on, fingers flying across the keyboard, immersed in the game. I pulled into my driveway and headed straight for the door. My mind was already back in the zone, thinking about the game I wanted to practice. But when I opened the door to my room, everything changed in an instant. My heart stopped, and for a moment, I just stood there in disbelief. My entire setup, my beloved gaming rig, was gone. The desk was empty, the monitor was missing, and even my gaming peripherals, my keyboard, mouse, headset, all of it was gone. A wave of confusion and panic hit me. I stood frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. At first, I thought maybe I had just overlooked something. Maybe I was just tired from the day and my mind was playing tricks on me. But no, my desk was completely empty. I ran around the house, searching for any sign of what had happened. I checked my parents' room, the living room, even the kitchen, but nothing seemed out of place. It was like my entire setup had vanished into thin air. My thoughts raced, and a knot formed in my stomach. Had I been robbed? I glanced around once more, but there was no sign of forced entry. No broken windows, no signs of a break-in. My house had been undisturbed. I was standing there, lost, confused, and honestly, a little scared. How could this happen? Where was my rig? My thoughts were spinning as I realized the most terrifying possibility. My family was involved, and I wasn't ready for the shock that would come next. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My heart was still pounding in my chest as I rushed downstairs, my mind racing to piece together what had happened. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in my stomach. What was going on? I needed answers, and fast. I walked into the living room where I found my parents sitting on the couch, sipping their coffee like it was just any other day. They were so calm, so casual, that it made my blood boil even more. "Where's my computer?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My throat was tight, and I could feel the anger rising in me. How could they just take it? My mom barely glanced up from her coffee. She looked almost indifferent to the storm that was brewing inside me. "We sold it," she said, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. I stared at her, completely stunned. "What? You sold it?" I asked, my voice cracking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That computer wasn't just a piece of technology, it was my dream, my work, my livelihood. It was the culmination of years of hard work, saving every penny, building something from scratch. How could they just sell it? My mom, completely unfazed, took another sip of her coffee. "It was just sitting there," she said dismissively, as if it didn't matter at all. And then came the bombshell that hit me harder than anything. "We sold it to help Emily buy new clothes for an event," she added, like it was nothing. Emily, my sister, had a history of getting whatever she wanted: designer clothes, extravagant shopping sprees, and my parents always made sure she had it all, no matter the cost. But this was different. They had sold something that meant everything to me. My world tilted. My dream, my work, my savings gone in an instant, all for something so trivial, something so shallow. I felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't understand how they could do this to me. "You sold my computer for Emily's clothes?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. My work, my future, it all meant nothing compared to her event? The anger swelled inside me, but I couldn't even find the words to express it. My parents had made a choice, one that had wiped away everything I had worked for. My entire world had just been flipped upside down, and I didn't know how to react, how to process it. I felt like I had just been punched in the gut, and for the first time, I realized that nothing I did would ever be good enough for them. I stood there, frozen, my mind swirling in a haze of confusion, disbelief, and anger. I could feel the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me, suffocating me with every passing second. My parents, who I had always looked up to, who I had worked so hard to make proud, were casually dismissing everything I had worked for as if it meant nothing. The computer, my $3,600 dream rig, wasn't just a machine to me, it represented years of sweat, sacrifice, and dedication. But to them, it was just a piece of hardware, something easily replaceable, something that could be sold to fund my sister's shopping spree. As I stood there trying desperately to keep my composure, I could feel the tears threatening to spill, and the rage bubbling up inside me, threatening to explode. But before I could even speak, my dad waved it all away, his face full of indifference. "Freelance work isn't a real job anyway," he scoffed, as if everything I had poured into my career was worthless. It was like a slap in the face, and my stomach churned with the sting of his words. For years, I had worked countless hours on freelance projects, building a career from the ground up, all while trying to prove that I was capable of succeeding on my own terms. But all of that was apparently irrelevant in their eyes. To my parents, my dedication, my work, my passion, they meant nothing. What mattered, what took priority, was Emily's event, her need for new clothes, and the world's endless validation of her every desire. As I stood there trying to process it all, the reality of my situation hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about the computer. It wasn't even about the money. It was about something deeper. It was about how my years of effort, my sacrifices, my future, everything I had built and was working towards, had been brushed aside, ignored, and trampled over by the very people I thought I could count on. Emily's fleeting needs had been placed above my own dreams, my career, and my future. I had spent so long trying to fit into their world, trying to meet their expectations, and in the end, it felt like it had all been in vain. They didn't see my worth. They didn't see how much I had given up, how much I had worked for. All that mattered to them was keeping their golden child happy. And in that moment, I realized that my family's priorities would never change. I would never be enough for them, not unless I fit into the narrow role they had decided for me. I was furious, but I knew I had to confront Emily. She was the golden child, the one who always got what she wanted without any consequences. I had always stepped aside, kept my frustrations to myself, and let her enjoy the privileges that came with being the favored one. But this was different. I couldn't let it slide anymore. I stormed into her room, and there she was, spinning around in front of her mirror, admiring herself in a brand new designer dress, as if everything was perfectly normal. I stood there for a moment, just taking in the image. She was so caught up in herself, in the image she was creating, that she didn't even notice the storm brewing inside me. My heart was pounding in my chest as I walked up to her. "Do you know what Mom and Dad did to buy you all this stuff?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel the anger shaking in every word. She didn't even look up from the mirror. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice casual, as if this wasn't even worth acknowledging. I could feel the frustration building inside me, like a tidal wave ready to crash. "They sold my $3,600 gaming PC so you could get your designer haul," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. I had put everything into building that computer. It wasn't just a game console for me, it was my career, my future, my identity. And now it was gone, sold for her latest fashion indulgence. She barely reacted. "It's just a computer." She shrugged dismissively. "You can always get another one." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just a computer to me. It was the result of years of hard work, the culmination of my sacrifices. But to her, it was nothing. She didn't care. It wasn't her effort that had been stolen. It wasn't her dreams that had been crushed. She wasn't even trying to understand. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of her indifference. "You knew they were going to do this, didn't you?" I asked, my voice louder now, the betrayal cutting through every word. "You mentioned it to them, didn't you?" Emily didn't flinch. "I didn't make them do it," she said, still nonchalant. She wasn't angry, wasn't even sorry. It was like she was so detached from the reality of the situation that she couldn't see the pain she had caused. I stood there for a moment, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, before I turned and stormed out of her room. I couldn't stand being around her any longer. I had hoped for some sign of empathy, some acknowledgement of the gravity of what had happened, but all I got was her cold, indifferent attitude. It was like the world had just shifted, and I realized that not only my parents, but my own sister had betrayed me. The days after the confrontation felt like a blur. I could barely focus on anything, and time seemed to crawl by as the weight of what had happened continued to press down on me. My parents acted like nothing was wrong. They went about their daily routines, sipping coffee, watching TV, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. They pretended as though everything was normal, as if they hadn't just sold the very thing I had worked for years to build. The silence between us grew more oppressive with each passing day. Meanwhile, Emily was still flaunting her new clothes, parading around in her latest designer finds like she hadn't a care in the world. Every time I saw her, it felt like a slap in the face. She was so absorbed in her material world, so indifferent to the fact that she had cost me everything that mattered to me. It was like she was rubbing it in my face, completely unaware or maybe just unwilling to acknowledge what her actions had done. I watched her, seething in silence, feeling my anger build up more with every step she took, every smile she flashed in her new outfit. In contrast, I was left with nothing. My dream, my work, my future, everything that had mattered to me was gone. The $3,600 PC, the product of years of hard work, was sold to fund Emily's fleeting wants, and all I had left was an old, slow laptop that barely worked. It struggled to run the most basic programs, let alone handle the demands of my freelance work. My deadlines were looming, and I could feel my productivity slipping away with each failed attempt to get anything done. The frustration was unbearable. I wasn't just facing the loss of my PC, I was facing the loss of my ability to work, to earn, to build a future. The worst part was that my parents didn't seem to care. They didn't understand the significance of what had been taken from me. To them, it was just a computer, something that could be replaced easily. They never asked how I was feeling, never tried to make it right. They just moved on, like it was all in the past. And I should too. But I couldn't. Every time I looked at my laptop, I was reminded of what had been stolen from me, not just the computer, but the respect and consideration I had always hoped to receive from my family. The silence between us spoke volumes. It wasn't just a lack of communication, it was a complete disregard for my feelings, my efforts, and my future. And in that silence, I realized something. If I didn't stand up for myself now, nothing would ever change. I spent the next few hours in a haze of anger and disbelief, replaying the events in my head over and over. My parents had sold my computer, the one thing I had poured my heart and soul into, and they didn't seem to care at all. Emily continued with her life, oblivious to the damage she had caused, while I was left holding nothing but frustration and a slow, useless laptop. I felt betrayed, not just by my family, but by the years of hard work that seemed to mean nothing to them. I had worked so hard to get to where I was, and it felt like it had all been erased in an instant. I couldn't stand it anymore. The silence, the indifference, it was eating me up from the inside. I had spent my entire life trying to earn their approval, trying to be the good son who always did the right thing. But all that had done was make me a doormat for them to walk all over. I had to do something. I couldn't let this go on any longer. So, I texted Ethan, my best friend, the one person who always had my back no matter what. I needed someone to talk to, someone who would understand. The message I sent was simple but filled with raw emotion. My parents sold my PC. I can't believe this is happening. When Ethan texted back, I could feel the anger in his words. Dude, you need to do something. Don't let them walk all over you, he wrote. His words echoed in my mind, and I felt a surge of determination rise within me. Ethan was right. I had spent too long letting my family treat me like I didn't matter. I had worked for years to build my future, and it was time I started standing up for what I deserved. For too long, I had accepted the way they treated me, putting Emily first, dismissing my needs, undermining my hard work. But that was over now. I was done. I wasn't going to let them continue to walk all over me and take advantage of my sacrifices. I wasn't going to let my dreams be crushed because they couldn't see my worth. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision I was about to make. It wasn't just about the computer anymore. It was about my self-respect. It was about standing up for myself, for the years of hard work that had shaped who I was. And it was about time I took control of my own life. The silence had become unbearable. After days of stewing in anger and frustration, I finally made up my mind I had to confront my parents. The betrayal was too much to let slide. I had been silent for too long, letting them walk all over me. But now, I was done. I wasn't going to let this go without making my feelings known. I spent the afternoon gathering everything I needed to make my case. I printed out receipts that showed exactly how much I had spent on the components of my gaming PC. I included screenshots of my freelance earnings to show that the computer wasn't just a luxury, it was my livelihood. I even dug up pictures of me building the rig step by step, showing the hours of work and dedication that had gone into it. This wasn't just a piece of technology, it was a reflection of years of hard work, and I was determined to make them understand that. That evening, I waited for dinner. As we all sat down at the table, the tension in the air was palpable. I could feel my heart racing as I stared at my parents, who seemed completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit them. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed a folder onto the table in front of them, the papers inside it rustling loudly. The sound echoed in the quiet room. "I want my money back," I said, my voice steady, though my hands were shaking with a mixture of anger and determination. I looked them both in the eye, refusing to back down. "You sold my PC for $1,200. I worked for years to build it, and I want it back." The words hung in the air for a moment before my dad's face darkened. "Watch your tone," he warned, his voice low. "You live under our roof. Everything in this house belongs to us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was brushing it off like it was no big deal, as if my hard work meant nothing. My chest tightened, and I shot back, "This isn't about that. It's theft." My words stung, and I could see the shock on their faces. My mom gasped, clearly taken aback by my outburst, but it was Emily's voice that cut through the tension. For the first time, she spoke up, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Are you seriously threatening Mom and Dad over a computer?" She sneered. The disdain in her voice made my blood boil. How could she be so heartless? I held my ground. This wasn't just about the computer anymore. It was about respect. It was about standing up for myself. That was it. I had reached my breaking point. Every ounce of frustration, anger, and betrayal that had been building inside me over the past few days came to a head. I had spent my entire life trying to keep the peace, trying to keep my family happy, and trying to be the one who always did the right thing. But that night, as I stared across the dinner table at my parents who seemed more concerned with defending their actions than understanding the damage they had caused, it became clear to me. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine, like their decisions didn't matter, like my hard work and dreams were secondary to my sister's fleeting wants. For years, I had been their doormat. When things were difficult, I was the one expected to sacrifice. When money was tight, I was the one who gave up something important. And now, they had sold my $3,600 gaming PC, the result of years of hard work, to fund Emily's shopping spree. They had stolen my future and treated it like it was no big deal. My heart was heavy with the weight of all the unspoken resentment, but in that moment, I made a decision. No more. With a calmness that surprised even me, I finally spoke up. "I'm done being the family's doormat," I said, my voice steady but filled with a fierceness I hadn't felt in years. Every word that came out of my mouth felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. You either pay me back, or I'll take legal action. I let the words sink in. I wasn't asking anymore. I was demanding what was rightfully mine. The room went silent. My parents' faces twisted with anger, their expressions darkening as the realization set in. They had never expected this from me. They thought they could keep walking all over me, keep taking advantage of my silence. But not anymore. I wasn't their scapegoat, their easy target, or their forgotten sacrifice. They were furious, of course. My mom's face turned bright red, her mouth opening to argue, but I didn't care anymore. I was done. This wasn't just about the computer anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about showing them that I had a limit they had crossed. I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. For once, I wasn't afraid of their anger. I was done being the one who always took the back seat. I was done being ignored, dismissed, and forgotten. The silence between us was deafening, but in that moment, I realized that it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was that I had taken control of my life. The next day, my parents handed me $1,200 in cash. Their faces were full of anger, disappointment, and a quiet resentment that I could feel radiating off them. I stared at the money in my hands, but the feeling in my chest wasn't one of triumph. No, it wasn't victory. It was just the price of standing up for myself. It was the cost of finally demanding that they respect me. And honestly, it felt hollow. I had fought for this, for the return of something that was rightfully mine, but it wasn't the victory I had imagined. The anger, the guilt trips, the tension in the air, it all lingered. Sure, I had my $1,200, but the damage had been done. The relationship with my parents was irreparably strained, and no amount of money could fix that. In fact, it felt more like a token, a transaction, than anything that resembled closure or peace. I contacted the buyer who had purchased my PC, hoping to retrieve what had been taken from me. After some back and forth, we settled on a deal, and I was able to buy back my rig. As I walked out of the store with my custom-built PC in hand, I felt a small sense of relief, but also a deep sense of loss. Holding my gaming rig again, reconnecting it to my desk, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, like getting back a part of my identity that had been stolen from me. It wasn't just about the money or the computer. It was about regaining something that I had worked so hard for. But as I sat there, staring at the screen, ready to dive back into my work, the truth hit me. Things would never be the same. No matter how much I had fought to get my PC back, I knew the dynamics in my family had shifted forever. The trust was broken, and the resentment I felt would linger long after the money had changed hands. I had won my rig back, but at what cost? The battle had taken more from me than just a computer. It had taken away the family bond that I thought was unbreakable. I realized then that this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of something else, something that would force me to take control of my life, to stop depending on my family for validation, and to start building my future on my own terms. I couldn't stay there anymore. Every day that passed under my parents' roof felt like another day of silently suffocating. I had been treated as second best for too long, my dreams and hard work dismissed, my worth overlooked in favor of Emily's never-ending list of material desires. I was done playing the role of the quiet, obedient son who just accepted things because that's how it had always been. No more. I had to take control of my own life because no one else was going to do it for me. So, I started planning my escape. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. The thought of moving out, of leaving everything familiar behind, was terrifying. I didn't have a huge savings cushion, and rent wasn't cheap, but I wasn't about to let that stop me. My freelance work had been picking up, and even though it wasn't enough to live comfortably yet, I knew I had the skills to make it work. I just needed to take the plunge. It was time to stop living in their shadow, to stop feeling like I was in a cage. I had spent years tiptoeing around my family's expectations, but now it was my turn to live life on my own terms. I found a small apartment nearby, just a few miles from where I'd grown up. It wasn't much, just a single room with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it was mine. It was a place where I could be myself, where I could work without feeling like I was constantly being judged or undermined. I signed the lease, my heart pounding in my chest as I handed over the first month's rent. It felt like the first step toward freedom, and it felt terrifying. But it also felt exhilarating. Over the next few days, I moved my things out in secret. I didn't want to give my family a chance to guilt trip me into staying. If I let them know what I was doing, I knew they'd try to talk me out of it, twist my emotions, make me feel guilty for wanting to leave. So, I packed up everything I could quietly, moving boxes to Ethan's place until I was ready for the final step. Ethan was my lifeline through all of this. He was the one person who had always supported me, no matter what. When I started to feel doubt creep in, when I thought about giving up or going back home, it was his voice that kept me going. He believed in me, in my dreams, and in the idea that I deserved better than the life I was living under my parents' roof. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew one thing for sure. I was finally taking control of my life, and nothing was going to hold me back anymore. The day I moved out was the day everything changed. I can still remember the feeling of relief as I stepped into my new apartment for the first time. It wasn't much, just a small room with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it was mine. It was the first time in years that I felt like I had a space that truly belonged to me, a space where I could be myself without the constant judgment, the expectations, or the suffocating weight of my family's demands. As I unloaded my things, the anxiety I had carried with me for so long began to fade. I no longer had to tiptoe around my parents, trying to please them or meet their expectations. I was free. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without feeling like I was being held down by invisible strings. The control they had over me, the manipulation, the guilt, it all started to slip away. And with it, I found a sense of peace I hadn't realized I was missing. I set up my PC in the corner of my new apartment, and as soon as I powered it up, a sense of accomplishment washed over me. It was my dream rig, the one I had fought so hard to get back. It felt like reclaiming a part of myself, a part of my identity that had been taken from me. As I set up my streaming equipment and prepared for my first stream in my new space, I couldn't help but feel a spark of excitement. It was small at first, just a few viewers, but it was mine. It was a platform where I could finally do what I loved, without anyone telling me it wasn't a real job or that I wasn't working hard enough. Every day after that felt like a new beginning. I started to focus more on my freelance work, reconnecting with old clients and reaching out to new ones. My business began to grow in ways I hadn't expected. Slowly but surely, the freelance gigs I had been picking up turned into steady work, and the income that had once felt so uncertain started to stabilize. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. In those quiet moments at my desk, when I would look around at my small but growing space, I realized just how far I had come. I wasn't doing this for anyone else anymore. I was doing it for me. And that, in itself, felt like the most powerful freedom of all. Even after moving out and starting my new life, my parents couldn't seem to let go. They kept trying to pull me back into their drama, sending me messages and making half-hearted attempts to guilt me into returning to the family fold. Every time my phone buzzed with a new notification, I felt a mix of dread and frustration. It was like I couldn't escape their manipulation, no matter how far I physically moved away. The emotional distance, however, was something they didn't respect. One evening, I received a text from my mom. The message was simple. "We're having a family dinner for Tiffany's birthday. We would love for you to come." It was so typical of her trying to paint everything as normal, as if nothing had happened. as if everything was fine and I should just drop everything and rejoin the family, like I hadn't spent years being disregarded. Like the $3,600 PC didn't matter, like all the sacrifices I had made had been for nothing. But this time, I wasn't going to let it slide. I wasn't going to play the role they expected of me anymore. I wasn't going to pretend that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. I was tired of pretending, of going along with their narrative just to keep the peace. I had already given up too much to keep them happy, and I was done. I stared at my phone for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the screen. I took a deep breath and typed my response. I'm not coming. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. I knew this message would not go over well. It wasn't what they expected to hear, and I could already feel the storm brewing. My mom didn't waste any time responding. Her message came through almost immediately. You'll regret this. It was the same old tactic they always used: guilt. They always wanted to make me feel like the bad guy, like I was abandoning them, like it was my fault that things had fallen apart. But this time, I didn't care anymore. I had been the one to make sacrifices, to stay silent, to keep trying to please them. I had spent years being the one to carry the emotional weight, and I was done. Their guilt-tripping no longer had any power over me. For the first time in my life, I realized that I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to go back to their toxic drama. I was finally living for myself, and that was all that mattered. It had been a few weeks since I moved out, and while I was adjusting to my new life, the silence from my parents and the family drama still lingered in the background. I had hoped that with the distance, things would quiet down and that my decision to leave would start to feel more like freedom than a burden. But the weight of what had happened didn't just fade away. I had made my peace with walking away from them, but it wasn't until I received a call from a family friend that I truly realized just how deep the manipulation and the damage went. The conversation with my family friend was brief but eye-opening. She told me that my parents had been reaching out to everyone they knew, asking for help. Apparently, they had been struggling with money, nothing surprising there. But what hit me like a ton of bricks was why they were struggling. They had spent all their money on Tiffany's wants. The clothes, the shoes, the designer bags, it was all piling up. And now, my parents were in a financial hole because of it. For the first time, it hit me. This was exactly why I had to leave. They had spent their resources on her desires, leaving nothing for my needs. They had chosen her over me, her material wants over my future, my livelihood. For years I had worked hard, trying to make a future for myself, only to see it disregarded for something so trivial. The money they used to buy her new things, the money they used to dismiss my needs, was now gone, and they were scrambling to pick up the pieces. I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. All this time, I had been made to feel guilty for wanting something more, for standing up for myself. I had been made to feel like I was the one who was in the wrong for asking for the same level of care and respect that Emily had gotten so easily. But now I saw the situation for what it truly was. I didn't owe them anything. They had spent years taking from me, emotionally and financially, and expecting nothing in return. But I was done. I had my own life now, and it was mine to build on my own terms. The decision to leave wasn't just about getting my PC back, it was about reclaiming my independence, my dignity, and my future. I was no longer going to let their poor choices define me or control my path. I was building something real for myself now, and no one could take that away from me. The story emphasizes the importance of self-respect, boundaries, and standing up for oneself, values that are timeless and essential, especially as we age. Life often presents situations where we may feel overlooked or taken for granted, particularly within our families. The key lesson here is that no matter how much we love our family, we must never lose sight of our own worth. We should never allow ourselves to be treated as second best or have our hard work and dreams dismissed. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's a way of ensuring that your emotional, mental, and even financial well-being are respected. As we age, it's natural to want to avoid conflict, but allowing ourselves to be walked over can lead to bitterness and regret. It's important to recognize that we deserve to be valued just as much as anyone else, regardless of age or circumstances. The journey of life is about growth, and even later in life, we have the power to make choices that honor our dignity and personal desires. Whether it's through setting boundaries with loved ones or pursuing our own dreams, we should always strive to live authentically. The message is clear. Never settle for less than you deserve, and never be afraid to reclaim your life no matter how old you are. Thank you for watching this story. We hope the journey of this young man helps you understand the importance of self-respect and independence. If you found the story meaningful, don't forget to like and subscribe to Silent Wars for more fresh and insightful videos.